Welcome to Full Scope, a podcast with two guys in their 20s giving their perspective on the games that we love and the story behind it all. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, along with my counterpart, Savon Morris. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. How's everything?
Pretty good. Well, tonight we're joined by a special guest, Jeremy Ruffin, the head coach of the Escambia Varsity boys basketball team. He joined us August, and it's good to have you back on, sir. Thanks for being on again.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Yes, sir. Well, to start it off tonight, the Spurs, they're currently seventh in the West, and they've won 7 of their last 10. And before this season, they lost 3 of their All NBA defenders in Kawhi, Danny Green, and DeJounte Murray. And this is a franchise that's always just prioritized lockdown defense and that kind of being the staple of what they do. And now that's diminished to an extreme rate. And but them still being in the thick of the playoff race at number 7 and having history of the 21 season playoff streak. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on how they've kind of been able to rebound lately, and how do you see them going, their chances going forward for the playoff race?
Well, I haven't seen much NBA basketball lately. Our seasons have been kind of busy and hectic, but the little
Right.
bit that I have been able to see, I'm just a firm believer in Greg Popovich.
Mhm.
So I know that, no matter what, he's going to get those guys playing at the right time. The biggest thing really in the NBA is buying in. Those guys all buy in together. They'll do well. And come after that All-Star break, I think they'll really start clicking and rolling.
Yeah. And Savon, it's interesting because the Spurs Raptors trade is all, I mean, and they play tonight, but it's something that a trade like that is always compared to how the teams kind of are able to exist after the trade, like who does better, like who got the better return. And now the Spurs are in a position where they really struggled coming out of the gate, but now they're kind of finally finding some semblance of consistency, and them being more of a mid-range team in a league that is really built on perimeter shooting. But how do you see them just finding a way to get into like an extremely tight playoff race, because there's about the 8th seed and the 1 seed is separated only by like 6 games.
Right. Um, the Spurs are not too far off, to be honest. We
Mhm.
all know who won the trade between the Toronto
Yeah.
Raptors and the Spurs, but just given the nagging injuries that the Spurs have, they just got Paul Gasol back after 26 games at a foot fracture. They got Rudy Gay back this game. It's a lot of nagging injuries and players that's left the organization, which
Mhm.
makes them kind of look like not the normal San Antonio Spurs. But they're not behind that much. They do have won and beat some good teams, but I think it's still the chemistry and the injuries that are kind of deterring them for being the team that we'll always see. I don't think they'll miss the playoffs. They're still in the hunt to go to the playoffs. They're like number 7, 6, 7. They're like 4 or 5 games behind. But I
Mhm.
think they can make it. I know
Yeah.
they can make it. They won't miss the playoffs, but it's
they
just
they've shown us
getting
that.
right. Yeah, and the White Snowman, Greg Popovich, he
Oh,
never
it's not,
count him
man.
out. And his team and his abilities and his concept and his theories that what basketball really is. But just getting everybody back, if Paul Gasol can get back healthy, if Aldridge can coincide with Paul Gasol, Rudy Gay get back to the point, they'll be fine. DeMar DeRozan can play a full season in a postseason well enough, they'll be fine. They'll make the playoffs, but they won't make a big run, but the streak will continue.
Yeah, and Jeremy, they've got 8 new players, and they currently have a net rating of plus 10.4 points per 100 possessions. And in November, they were at a minus 3.5 net rating. But if you compare them losing DeJounte Murray to them having to bring in 8 new players, like which one do you think factors in more of them not having maybe a stronger start?
Like I said, I haven't seen much NBA
Yeah.
ball, but just from the little bit of highlights I've seen on ESPN and just kind of viewing things and being a coach, I would say bringing in 8 new guys, that's always tough.
Hmm.
They had so much turnover. I mean, even losing Kawhi, you know, who's a big factor in what you're doing. That's huge, you know, and a lot of times you can have a great system. Let's look at LeBron. You know, those guys, it took them a little bit to get going. But once you get that chemistry, you know, they'll start flowing. They're NBA guys. They've got a high IQ. You've got to have a high IQ to play in Greg Popovich's system. So, you know, in time, you know, I think you said they were negative in November or
November,
starting to make progress. So, you know, hey, that's all it is. You know, coaches, no matter what what level you at, you want to see progress. And you can't compare this year to any other years. You know, you just got to say
different.
This year is different. And as long as we're better today than we were yesterday, man, that's all you can ask for. So, you know, I think like Savion said, they're going to do fine, man. They'll get it. They might not make a huge splash, but they'll do fine.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Savon, before we move on, how do you see the return? How do you think the reception, not the reception, but how do you just view the Kawhi's return to San Antonio?
I think it's still bad blood. From the fans' point of view, even Greg Popovich said, look, you learn to move on. I don't want to go into the past. I think it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, including Kawhi Leonard. That's why he opted out to leave and go to another team and not play for them. But I think the atmosphere, it will be, you know, kind of like when LeBron James came back to the Cavaliers the first time when he left.
I think it's going to be pretty rough.
Booed. It's going to be definitely rough. But
I think Danny Green would definitely get more of a positive reception because he was, you know, the consummate professional.
He should. Kawhi should do, too, the amount of time and effort he put in that ball team and the amount of, you know, backseat riding he had to do with Ginobili, Tony Parker, all those guys. He didn't have the highlight or the limelight for a long time, so he had to take the backseat to a lot of players. But just given his I think his unselfish attitude, his selfless attitude before, and now he wants to be a different ball player. I think they should congratulate him for improving his ability as a basketball player. But it's definitely going to be rough. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of boos.
I would think so. Transitioning to Toronto, they're currently second in the East and 28-11, and when they've been healthy, they've looked like the most complete team in the East. And, you know, Pascal Siakam, he's looked like a breakout star, and Serge Ibaka's having one of his best seasons in the last few years. And this is a team, I know, Jeremy, you were talking about how you haven't seen a lot of these teams, but on paper, I mean, they go too deep at every position. They've got the length and athleticism to match up with any team. But since Lowry's been out, they've only averaged 100 points, and when he's on the floor, they average 117 points per 100 possessions. But Jeremy, if you had to give a quick quick take about how you think this team, maybe how dangerous you think this team is, maybe compared to a Milwaukee who currently has the best record in the East, what would your thoughts be?
You're right. I haven't seen Milwaukee or Toronto. I saw a little bit of basketball on Christmas Day, so I was able to see a little bit of teams. You know, with me as being a coach, depth is so important. I think that's why Boston was able to make a big run last year. It's because they had good depth and they had a good system. And I think Toronto's got a great system. You know, they've got guys who they're playoff ready. So I'm really excited to see when these guys start narrowing down and deciding to play some good defense, and you know, once it comes playoff time, you know, they rack it up another notch. And Toronto, it's hard to play in Toronto, man. I mean, when those fans get going and those guys start playing together, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and Savon, this is a team that has, you know, streaky 3-point shooters, and then you add in with Kyle Lowry, his playoff resume has kind of been up and down, and he kind of has, you know, disappearing acts for some stretches. But if just compared to how Milwaukee has really just looked like a dominant regular season team so far, and it looks like they can win 60 plus, and Giannis is a top MVP candidate. Do you think they've kind of breaking in as the team that should be the most dangerous, or do you still think it's Toronto?
You know what? I don't give any of them. at first we all thought it was going to be the Celtics,
Right.
And then we thought it was going to be the process, and then that process kind of got muddy. Now we see you can't leave Indiana Pacers out. They're what,
right. They're the best defensive team in the league right now.
Yeah, so Victor Oladipo is playing some great basketball. He's finally got to a point where he can be the guy and flourish on a basketball court and allow him to do what he does best. I hate that he's with the Magic because they did not let him do that. And with
right.
the OKC, thank you. So I just can't give it to one team right now because everybody is playing great basketball.
There's 5 good teams in the East right now. Right. But there's like 4 elite.
Been like that for a while though. Now I think now LeBron James has like left. Now we get like, oh, the East is pretty good.
Yeah.
Now we can see the teams now, and I just can't give it to anybody just because of the fact that everybody's playing good basketball. Even the Celtics are starting to get that chemistry and find who plays best together.
And Gordon Hayward looked, 35 points off the bench. I think with Boston, it's just going to be a long process. We can't really accurately judge them until it gets to April and May and we see the finished product.
Exactly. And the GM said he's not looking to trade or get rid of anybody off that basketball team. So they have to figure it out sooner or later. Probably sooner than later because it's going to get tough. It's going to be really tough. What can you do? Can you beat a team that's below you? I think Milwaukee Bucks don't even compare to amount of talent they have on paper. But when it comes to playing basketball on the court, I think Milwaukee can beat anybody. And that's the same thing with Toronto, adding Danny Green.
In the postseason?
In the postseason, yes. In the postseason. They still haven't figured out. They're figuring out a little bit, but they haven't figured out. On paper, the Celtics have a better team than the Golden State Warriors, against the Houston Rockets, the process, all these teams on paper, the amount of talent they have and going the distance without their top guys.
Yeah, they're 10 deep.
Exactly. So they just haven't figured it out. Once they figure it out, then there'll be fear. There'll be fear in the East, and there'll be fear in the West, the North, South, whatever. There'll be fear. But they just haven't figured it out yet. So that's why I can't give it to – if I could, I would give it to all 5 teams. Yeah,
and because the top tier of the East has been really strong. It's the bottom that hasn't been that way. But Jeremy, dealing with home court advantage for these teams, if you had to let's say Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, even throw in Philly, out of those teams, like which one do you think would kind of needs the home court advantage the most? Milwaukee and Toronto have the 2 best chances of that, but who would you kind of give the edge to in terms of that home court advantage being important in the postseason for them?
What were the 3 teams again?
Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston. And even you can even throw Philly in there too, but Milwaukee and Toronto seem to have the best chance of that.
I think Milwaukee would need the home court advantage, in my opinion, because I don't think they're as playoff ready as some of these other teams.
Right.
You look at some of these. You guys just I think you hit the nail on the head a minute ago. On paper, certain teams look better. You've got a best regular season, but when you get to the postseason, man, you're 0-0. And for the longest time, James Harden never showed up in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It's just a whole different world when you get to the playoffs and you got that pressure. So I would think a younger playoff team, in the sense of them making that run, might need it. But once you make it to the playoffs, once you make it to the postseason, everybody's 0-0. So you really never know what can happen at any point in time. I think it's tough to play in Boston. I think the toughest place to play, in my opinion, might be Toronto. I mean, it's just something about the energy they get there that I've heard from several different people. It's just on a different level. So I think it's going to be fun in the East, not having that factor of LeBron, and now you get to see guys having to have actual players have to make some serious plays and really make some things happen. Yeah,
Milwaukee to me is a team. They're not as playoff ready to me as Boston and Toronto. And they were able to push Boston, save on to a Game 7 last season when Boston had a pretty good Eastern Conference playoff run. But Milwaukee to me, I would think would need the home court advantage the most. Transitioning to the Blazers and Clippers, I think the Blazers are 5th. I think the Clippers are 5th in the West, and the Blazers are 6th. And no, the Blazers are currently 5th in the West. And Damian Lillard, he's currently averaging a career high 27.1 points per game, and he scored at least 40 points on 5 occasions. And Jeremy, to me, the reason I would give the Blazers as a better chance of being kind of a dark horse in the West is because of a player like Damian Lillard. And the Clippers, they're a very scrappy team, that they're defensively sound, even though their defense has taken a step back. But just comparing those two teams and what you know about them, who would you kind of give the edge to of who has a better chance to be a dark horse in the postseason?
I've always liked Damian Lillard and man, what's the shooter they got?
CJ McCollum.
Oh man, I love that combination
of
those two guys. I think they've got some good talent around them, and I think they're, like we just said a moment ago, I think they're playoff ready. They've been in the playoffs. They've played against the Warriors. They played against Utah. They've been in some tough battles. I don't know if the Clippers have played together quite as long, and so I'm not sure. Like you say, on paper, in my opinion, you would think you would give the edge to the Clippers, but when you tip that ball in the postseason, you really never know how guys are going to handle it when you really put that pressure. When you get that pressure, you're either going to flourish or you're going to break. And a lot of times, even as NBA coaches, you just don't know what's going to happen until you go through it.
Yeah, and Savon, both teams are below 500 on the road, and the Clippers, they had the feel good start, but they're currently, I think, 25th in defending the pick and roll, and only the Knicks have a worse ranking than that. But in terms of that, because this is a team that really surprised, I think, both of us, because we were talking about the Clippers and Grizzlies a couple of weeks ago, and their chances of, the Clippers' chances of getting maybe 2 or maybe 1 free agent. But who would you give that to?
I'll have to give it to the Clippers, man, just because the amount of disrespect the Clippers have in LA and around the West, they haven't been took serious in a long, long time. And I finally think they have a young team, and a lot of other players that are going to come and gel together in the future to be able to make runs and be a contender in California. I just like Bradley Beal. I like Tobias Harris. He's a guy that came over from the trade with Blake Griffin. And I like Gorsan Gortat. I really like him as a center. He's a good pick and roll guy, and he plays great defense. I don't know what the Washington Wizards were thinking letting him go, but they have all the tangibles as a team, as a unit. They're down. They started off hot. They're a little down, but they're still number 5, averaging 116 points a game. I like that. They play a phenomenal offense. Like you said, the defense are kind of on the back burner, but I look for them to kind of like get that going, get the defense going, because they don't have Patrick Beverly is the only defensive guy, tenacious guy on that team. And I look for him to lead them into getting better, but their offense, you can't count them out when they're number 5 overall in offense in the whole NBA, averaging 116 points. I like that young team.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I've already gotten Savon's take on the kind of the Clippers free agency just pursuits, but let's say I don't know how like what player you think they could get, but there have been like tons of talks about them going after Kawhi or Kevin Durant or even both. But whether it be Kawhi or Durant, how could you see that? Who do you think they should keep, or who do you think they should maybe give up for a player like that? Because obviously, just like the Lakers with Paul George, they weren't willing to trade, and then 2 years later he decided to stay with OKC. But how do you foresee kind of their free agency pursuits, or just what player do you think they should go after if they have the chance to go after one?
I actually haven't seen the Clippers play that much. I was actually surprised to hear Bradley Beal. Wasn't he with the Washington?
Sorry, yes.
He still is.
Avery Bradley.
Avery Bradley.
It was like I was thinking of him. Sorry, guys.
I was gonna say, man, that they just let a baller leave Washington.
They do look alike.
That's a tough question because whether you as a general manager and kind of talking with people who've kind of done some of this stuff, it's tough when you look into free agents because you got to think of a few different things. How's it going to affect my chemistry? How does this guy working with our team psychologically, emotionally, physically playing with the team, verbally, how do they fit in? What do we need? What are we willing to give up? Do we want to give anything up? There's just a lot of questions you have to be able to answer. So I haven't really seen them play to know what they need to really be able to answer that question. I just don't think that the Clippers have been able to get that free agent guy yet.
Right.
And I think they could get him, but they got to get across that little brother syndrome to the Lakers.
In LA, yeah.
And I don't know if that's ever going to be able to happen. You lose a Chris Paul and you lose a Blake Griffin. I just don't know, if someone would go. But if they were able to get someone, if a top-tier guy could go, man, what do they always say? Go big or go home.
Yeah.
Are you in a win-now situation, or are you in a let's preserve it, let's get rid of somebody, and let's see if we can, in the future, just hang in there for a few years. So.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Transitioning to the trade deadline, there are probably a few teams that, in terms of maybe being top contenders or even not being top contenders, that may pursue a trade or pursue a shooter out of the buyout market. And just like last year, I'm going to start it off, but just like last year, the Sixers, they went after Bellinelli and Ilyasova, and that really upticked their perimeter shooting. And Savon, I kind of feel like it's that way again. I would say the Sixers could use the trade the most because their depth and perimeter defense has taken a big hit. And last year they were third in defensive efficiency. This year they're 14th. And when you have Simmons, Butler, and Embiid, they only give up 102.5 points per 100 possessions, and that trio can't always be on the floor together, and that's why they haven't had as much consistency defensively. But Savon, what team do you think could benefit the most from a trade before the deadline happens?
I think I'm gonna stay in Cali. I think the Los Angeles Lakers need a trade. I know they said they want to wait and be patient. They knew that it was going to be a 2-3 year process when LeBron's get there. But I think they need another trade. I think they need a center or a big man who can spread the floor. I think that's what they're missing. McGee and Tyson Chandler.
Tyson
I know
Chandler.
all these guys are tall, light-skinned guys, look alike a little bit, but they don't have that on the court. They don't have that like when LeBron just had Chris Bosh or Kevin Love, guys who can spread the floor and kind of create open lanes for LeBron James to dish it or to finish at the rim. They don't have that. And I know they'll probably wait to the free agency. And I know the only big guy that's available is Canters. They're looking to trade him. Only thing about him, he has $18 million that need to be paid. But they need something. They need a big man who can spread the floor and open up transitioning for LeBron and let them run a little bit.
Yeah, and Jeremy, with the maybe like the Lakers or the Sixers or even I don't know Boston. I don't think they're going to be in, but you never know. With the trade deadline, in terms of a team that could use an edge. I don't know if you have one, but if there was a team that, in terms of just what you've heard around from the league, what team would it be?
Well, I got to be honest. I'm a Bulls fan, man. We could use some help.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough players available right now for our help. I don't know because you look at a Boston team. They're really starting to click, man. They've got some good chemistry. Those teams that are kind of 6, 7, and 8, where you really don't want to fall off, but then again, you don't, you really want to make the playoffs. Sometimes those teams just need a boost. I heard the thing about the Lakers there. I just think it's tough there because you've got so many moving parts. How many moves do you really want to make? How many times do you really want to change your team? So you got to think of a lot of chemistry. I don't know that I've seen enough basketball to be able to give one team. But, those teams to me that are like 5 through 8, sometimes they can use that little, catapult to kind of get them over the hump, kind of to get into the playoffs and get that star. Are there guys that are available maybe to trade for that aren't in a good team that are looking to maybe a veteran or a young guy? I know Markelle Fultz might have been
Kent Bazemore, Wayne Ellington they're available.
Yeah. Kaminsky is available too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you might be able to steal a guy, from a team like that that's not gonna, a team that's not winning or they're tanking and they're going downhill quick, and maybe pull a guy from a team like that.
Yeah, and so Savon, with the Lakers, you kind of feel like they just need another big man. They don't really need to make a drastic move yet, since I mean, they're currently 8th in the West now, and the West it changes like from day to day and from week to week. So you feel as though they just need
like the stock market.
So you feel like they just need probably another big to kind of sustain them when McGee is out, and they've just got to go with Chandler or Zubac.
Yes, I think you get a big guy who can come in and start right away, and then bring McGee and Chandler off the bench, because those guys are decent at the rebound. They can, score every now and again, but they don't spread the floor. Nobody fears them. You need a player that's feared, that they can, be able to crash. If he's on the three-point line, but the big guy, you have Kevin Love or even Embiid, you're going to crash hard on the three-point line. That opens up so much in the lanes. I think that's what they need. They have a field general. They have guys who can shoot. They have guys who can finish at the rim, but they don't have a guy who can spread the floor. And I think that's what LeBron James and the Lakers are missing, because that's what he's used to be honest.
Yeah.
He's having shooters, but he's also used to having big guys who are dual threats and are versatile in their game, being Kevin Love and Chris Bosh. Just a few. He did have Channing Frye, too, for a little bit, too.
He did. Transitioning to Golden State, they're currently 25 and 13 and second in the West, and they're going to play Houston tonight. They've been red hot, and Harden's been as good as anybody in the league so far this season. And last year, Jeremy, the fatigue element was kind of the biggest word that was thrown around for why they were kind of middling and not hitting their peak yet, and then they got pushed to the brink by Houston. Were able to overcome that. And this year, they pick up Cousins, and, they're second in the West, but still with the Durant impending free agency and that rift, and them being blown out by the Lakers on Christmas Day and blown out by Milwaukee at home a couple months ago. What are your thoughts on how they'll look when they get Cousins back? And are there any concerns? Like, should they still be the favorite? Because I definitely think they should be. Like, if you ask me, are you going to pick the Warriors or the field, I would still pick the Warriors.
Yeah, I think just naturally, the champ is the champ until you beat the champ. People talk about they hate to see Alabama. Well, beat them. You don't want to keep seeing that. You got to beat them. So,
right.
That I think that's what you got to think about as well. Now, things can look good on paper, but Cousins has been injury prone. So, has he taken his time to come back to where he's really comfortable? How is he going to gel with the team truly when it's all fun and games when you're sitting on the bench, but when you step up 2 feet up to the court and you're not touching the ball quite as much, what are you going to do? Is that going to be a chemistry problem? So, that's something to think about. But, Steve Kerr is a great coach. And, people make a joke about coaches. It's 90% being a psychologist and 10% coaching. And a lot of it is true, because you got to get the guys all on the same page and get them to really buy into, there's one basketball, there's 5 of you, but you got to play together. So, until someone beats Golden State, they're the team to beat. As long as they stay injury free, and as long as they continue to play great defense, they're at the end of the day, they're playoff ready. They've won, so they know the pedigree to win.
Yeah, and Savon, this is a team where when Draymond has significantly struggled from the perimeter. He's shooting, I think, below 20% from 3. When he shoots at least 40%, they're almost unbeatable. And because a lot of times, obviously teams are not going to respect him from the perimeter. And if he burns them from there, then they just have to live with it. And Klay has kind of struggled, I think, 33% from 3 this season, which is very abnormal for him. But what have you seen in terms of kind of some of their struggles? And, could this be we feel as though Durant will probably leave next year, but do you think this is something? But do you think this is a season where they can finally just, having Cousins will kind of galvanize them again to make maybe like one final run?
I think the personalities of each player are catching up with each other. Mm-hmm. We already knew what kind of player and attitude that Kevin Durant had when he was with OKC. And this is not his first time he told players to give him the ball. I think it was doused for a little bit because he wanted a championship so bad. So he had to eat at his own stuff to keep his real personality out. Now, we all know what type of personality Draymond Green has and Steph Curry and so on, so on. Their personality is catching up with them. Like Jeremy said, that the chemistry ties into a great basketball team, and that's the personality plays a key into that too. So that's another thing. Then you add toxicness. We're just gonna look at the history. DeMarcus Cousins is not a good guy. He's a cool guy outside the basketball court, but
Not on the
on the
court.
basketball court, he is tenacious. He's nasty. He's dirty. He's a guy who doesn't give any crap. He doesn't give any crap. He's like a Dennis Rodman, but in true macho form, if you get my drift. There's just a lot of outside things, basketball, that's playing a role in it not being successful, and we're seeing that. Now it would get to the nitty-gritty. They're not shooting as good as they used to. They live and die by the three-point line. And
they're not as good defensively.
That too, because Draymond was hurt for a point. Steph Curry was hurt. Then you have the chemistry issues. Everybody's going at each other's throat. It's a lot of stuff going on in that camp right now, and they just have to figure it out. That's what's going on. They're still a great basketball team on paper and on the court, but it's just so much stuff that adding to the fuel to the fire. They're not focusing on basketball with injuries, personality issues, not shooting well, or playing defense, and that will tear any team down. I think that was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't. But Jeremy, outside of Golden State, we saw it with Houston last year, and now they're fourth in the West with them, winning 10 of their last 11, and Harden just, I think averaging 39, and he's been on a tear these last 10 games. What team do you see them in the Western Conference Finals maybe giving them a bit of a scare? Even though we think probably the finals will be their biggest test, but who do you see in the Western Conference Finals possibly being that team that could give them a bit of a run?
Oh man, that's a question. Do you answer it like a commentator? Do you answer it like a coach? Do you answer it like a fan?
Just a fan.
No, just a fan. I did see a couple of games during Christmas. I think OKC is a tough team, man. I think if they really start to click, man, that's a dangerous team. But then, Houston as well. Do you play Houston's game where you just try to shoot as many threes as possible, or do you stick to your guns and where you try to get the ball inside here and there as well? I love watching the Utah Jazz play. They just play hard. They don't really care who scores. They get up and down the floor. I think it's Donovan Mitchell, man. He's a great basketball player. So, at the end of the day, you just don't know. But I think OKC's got a chance. I think
OKC.
Houston's got a chance as well. I just don't know if Houston plays enough defense right now.
Right.
They care of that end of the floor enough. They don't have enough guys that care. And people are going to start to figure out very soon, you're going to have to go at James Harden. You're going to have to make him play defense, and that's going to take his legs out. So sooner or later, some teams will wake up and get that formula.
Yeah, and Savon, you've talked about it, how Harden, he has phenomenal starts to the season and just phenomenal seasons in general. He's the most dynamic offensive player in the league, as we were talking about. But seeing OKC recently, I would say OKC because I think George is finally finding his rhythm in their offense. And Westbrook, I think he was 3 of 20 last night, and they still were able to win handily against LA. And that seems like a great recipe for success. But who would you give the edge to?
Out of OKC and
a team to make it to the Western Conference Finals that could possibly push Golden State.
I think we had this question before.
Yeah.
I want to say the Lakers. Everything in me wants to say the Lakers just because LeBron James. I know he's kind of banged up right now, but I can never go against LeBron. Just given what he did last year. And they still had an opportunity to win that finals given the first game. Yeah. I do believe in momentum 110%. And I think that first game would have took them and kind of, took the wing out of the Warriors' sails just a little bit. but it didn't happen. But I just given the fact that LeBron James, I think they're still young. They're definitely young. They do have some veteran guys, but Rondo is hurt. But if they can just push through and continue to be a little more healthy, I think they can make a run for it. Just given the mindset of LeBron James, you cannot count him out. I think they can go against Warriors. And given that they beat the Warriors without LeBron James the whole entire game. So that has to give you some of the back of your mind, like, okay, is this team really for real? Or is Golden State Warriors that bad this year that they are losing without LeBron, losing to a team without LeBron James? But I'll have to give it to the Lakers. I know you say OKC. I'm going to go to the Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a good pick. Before we wrap up, Jeremy, I don't know how much you've seen of Zion Williamson and Duke this year, but you know, he's one of just a complete freak of nature and it's been phenomenal. And there has been the thing, like when you talk about the Bulls and just below average teams and how they'll go after a player like that. Jeremy, do you think this is the best prospect we've seen since Anthony Davis, or just kind of how would you categorize a player like this and who could possibly change an NBA franchise?
I'm a huge Kentucky basketball fan, so my hopes and dreams were killed the first game of the season, man. I went into that game saying he can't shoot.
Right.
Him and Barrett, they just can't shoot, and yeah, they proved that wrong. I don't think they can shoot quite well enough every night right now.
Right.
I think that might be his downfall is shooting, and teams will understand that. But man, he's just got some God-given ability that a lot of people just don't have. He's got a rare mix of a Charles Barkley / Sean Kemp / LeBron James type game, and it's scary. It's really scary. Now, my only thing with Zion is, the day and age we live in. A lot of NBA players before who would have gotten drafted to just be excited. A lot of these young kids nowadays, there's certain teams that they don't want to go to.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know him.
He said he'd love to play for the Knicks.
Yeah. See, there you go. So when that NBA draft lottery and all that stuff goes through, there's going to be teams definitely trying to make some trades to get that number one pick. And I think if you get the number one pick, you might be able to get some things, in return. Or do you want to say, hey, let's take 3-4 years, build around this guy who's going to put some people in some seats for us? So, people think it's all about winning. It's really not. It's about money.
Yeah.
NBA. So it's a big seller. So there's a lot you gotta really put into that.
Yeah, and Savon, this is I think the Knicks are currently have the worst record in the league, and you've got the Hawks and other I think the Bulls as well, teams that are really struggling in that bottom position of the league. But when you have a player like this, like how in terms of tanking, and we've seen it with Philly, how much is Philly's case different compared to maybe what these teams will try to go after in terms of getting a player like Zion?
What would Philly do to get Zion?
No, I mean, comparing how Philly went about the process, do you think it may be something that it was just such a rare case? They were finally able to get 3 All-Stars, and other teams, how do you think other teams will kind of go about the tanking process after seeing what Philly was kind of able to accomplish?
Excuse me. I think with Philly, his name, the OG general manager, his name escapes me right now, but I think he was a different breed of type of guy. That he was strategic and he knew the ins and outs of how to get plays there. I don't think every general manager is the same, but it's going to be extremely hard for teams to kind of mirror or even emulate what the 76ers have done so far. And they still have not a long way to go, but they still have a bit to go.
Right.
So it's going to be extremely hard. But in the case of Zion, I think Zion can make any team better right away. You look at Doncic, you're so highly off. If he even goes to the Knicks or the Cavaliers, I like him with Sexton.
Right.
I like him with him. I like that lineup. I like him with Porzingis. I think that's why he wants to play with the Knicks. If he can just stay healthy, Porzingis, just stay healthy. Gentle giant.
He's special.
Gosh. He's a great basketball player. I forgot who said if he could just stay healthy, he would be a terror in the league. And that's always been an issue for any team, but especially for him. He's been injured in the past. He won't be back until March. But it's kind of hard to do that and emulate that process because every team is different. Everybody's cap salary is different.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on where you fall. And the 76ers fell into those spaces and were able to get those type of players, but you can't do that for everybody. But I think Zion will be an immediate impact of greatness because, like Jeremy said, that he's a freak of nature. He's combined with three guys. If he could just get his shot better, consistent, sheesh.
Yeah, and the spacing with the league, that really favors him because there's more spacing in the NBA compared to college, and his shot, just like we see with Ben Simmons, that's the only thing. That's the only impediment currently with him right now.
And I think they can fix that, and we've seen that with different players. Look at LeBron; he kind of switched his shot up, and he's more confident in his 3-point shot now because he's shooting from the nosebleeds these days. But it's just that confidence and that work ethic. How can I improve? You look at Giannis; he improved on that too. And Giannis, man, sheesh, Giannis is a beast too. This is so many great basketball players that improved.
And him shooting from the perimeter is his impediment too. But even though he is improving.
Yes, I think so. But I'm old school. I like guys who can finish at the rim, who can create their own shot. I like the 3-point, but I won't live by it. I like guys who can finish at the rim. That's why I love, guys like LeBron. He doesn't have to shoot from the 3-point line. He can if he wants to, but he finished at the rim like a real man. Yeah. Kobe did the same thing. Michael did the same thing.
And you also think about Alonzo Ball, coming out of college, his shot was just broke. I mean, it was just flat out broke. But, what we tell, college players and high school players, it's really not about having perfect form. It's about having form that works for you.
Right.
So, with Zion, as long as he stays in the gym and gets reps and just does the same thing every time, he'll be fine. He's never going to be, I don't think, a Steph Curry type player. That's just not him. But, if he becomes that Andre Iguodala type player that can be a great role player and can hit that mid-range jump shot as well as be athletic, I mean, he's going to be very hard to stop. I mean, he's just so big and he's strong and, he's definitely a player of the century. You don't see many like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Jeremy, thank you for being on again. It was a pleasure as always.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me on. I definitely always enjoy that.
Yes, sir. Well, that wraps it up for tonight. I'm your host, Wellington Burns, along with my counterpart, Savon Morris. This has been Full Scope. See you later.